The bus door slammed, and his hand reached for a weapon that wasn't there anymore. The metal hatch slammed open with a hollow echo, cold air rushing out like something had been sealed alive. Ranger froze, ears locked forward, while Daniel's hand hovered where his weapon used to be. Somewhere below, something shifted, just enough to not be imagination. He stepped closer anyway, not knowing what was waiting in the dark. What do you think is down there? The bus didn't slow down until the last second. It came in fast, tires grinding against loose gravel, heat waves rising off the asphalt like something alive. The engine coughed once, then settled into a low, tired rumble as it stopped beside a crooked sign that read, Dry Creek, Pop, 312. No one stood there to greet it. The door folded open with a sharp hiss. Daniel Hayes stepped down without looking back. The desert hit him immediately, dry, heavy, and hot, in a way that pressed into your lungs instead of your skin. The kind of heat that didn't move, just sat there, waiting. He adjusted the strap on his worn duffel bag. The fabric had faded from years of sun, sand, and places that didn't show up on maps. His boots crunched against gravel as he took his first step onto the roadside. Behind him, the bus door slammed shut. The sound snapped through the air, loud, sudden. Daniel froze. For a fraction of a second, the desert disappeared. Sand turned to dust. Heat turned to fire. The crack of the door became something else. Closer, sharper, incoming, too close. His hand moved before his mind caught up, reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. Then it was gone. Just silence. Just the desert again. Daniel lowered his hand slowly, flexing his fingers once before letting them fall to his psalmwood. His jaw tightened, but he didn't react beyond that. Not anymore. The bus pulled away, leaving a trail of dust that swallowed the road behind it. And just like that, he was alone. A German shepherd stepped down beside him, silent and controlled. The dog moved with purpose, staying close to Daniel's leg without needing a command. Ranger. Broad chest, alert eyes, coat a mix of tan and black dulled slightly by travel. He didn't pant like most dogs in the heat. He watched. Always watched. His ears shifted, catching distant sounds. The hum of an old generator somewhere. A screen door slamming across the street. Boots scraping against wood. Daniel didn't need to look to know people were watching. He could feel it. Across the road, a diner sat low against the wind, paint peeling, windows dusty. Inside, figures moved slower now. Conversations dropped just enough to notice. A man near the entrance leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes fixed. Another stood near a pickup truck, pretending to check something in the bed while glancing over every few seconds. They weren't curious. They were measuring. Daniel turned his head slightly, just enough to catch reflections in the diner window. Angles, distance, movement, old habits. He mapped it all without thinking. No immediate threat. Just judgment. Ranger shifted closer, brushing lightly against Daniel's leg. Not nervous, just aware. Yeah, Daniel muttered under his breath. The wind picked up, dragging dust across the empty road. It scraped against his boots, soft but constant. He started walking, each step steady, not fast, not slow, just moving. The town didn't react. It absorbed him the way it had absorbed everything else, quietly, without interest. A woman stepped out of the diner, rag in hand, wiping her palms as she paused mid-step. Her eyes flicked to Ranger first, then to Daniel. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just watched. Daniel didn't break stride. Ranger's head turned once, scanning her, then the open doorway behind her. His ears twitched slightly, catching something deeper inside. Voices, chairs shifting, the rhythm of a place that had already decided what it thought of them. Drifter. The word didn't need to be said out loud. Daniel crossed the street, Gravel gave way to cracked pavement, then back again. The heat shimmered off everything, bending edges, distorting distance. He moved past the diner without stopping. No coffee, no conversation. Not today. Ranger stayed tight at his side, matching every step. No leash, no command, just instinct. At the edge of town, the pavement ended. The road turned to dirt, stretching out into open desert where nothing broke the horizon except low hills and a faint line of fencing miles out. Daniel stopped there for a moment. Not long. Just enough. The wind carried something with it. Dry earth, rust, and something older underneath. Something that didn't belong to the town behind him. Ranger's posture shifted. Subtle. His head lifted slightly, ears forward, body angled toward the open land. Not the town. Not the road. Out there. Daniel followed his gaze. Nothing. Just heat and distance. Still, he didn't move right away. His chest rose slowly as he took in a breath, held it, then let it out. "Yeah," he said quietly. His voice didn't carry far. "We'll see." Ranger didn't look away. Daniel adjusted the strap on his bag one more time, then stepped off the pavement and onto the dirt road. The town behind him faded fast. No one called out. No one asked where he was going, and no one told him to stay. Ahead, the desert stretched wide and empty. But it didn't feel empty. Not completely. Ranger moved a half step ahead now, just enough to lead without making it obvious. Daniel noticed. He always noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly as he walked, scanning the horizon, the ground, the subtle shifts in terrain. Old instincts settling back into place, piece by piece. The kind that never really left. The kind that kept you alive. The wind picked up again, stronger this time. And somewhere out there, too far to hear, too far to see, something waited. Daniel didn't know it yet. But Ranger did. And he wasn't walking into nothing. He was walking toward it. The dirt road stretched for miles, cutting through the desert like a scar that never healed. Daniel kept a steady pace, boots sinking slightly into the loose earth. The sun climbed higher, burning off what little cool the morning had left behind. Ranger moved ahead now. Not far, just enough. His nose dipped low every few steps, then lifted again, catching the wind. He wasn't wandering. He was tracking something Daniel couldn't see. After about a mile, the sound of an engine drifted in from behind. Daniel didn't turn right away. He stepped slightly off the road, just enough to give space, but also enough to see reflections in the truck's windshield as it approached. Old habit. Don't present your back. Don't get boxed in. A pickup slowed beside him. Dust rolled forward, coating Daniel's boots and the lower edge of his jeans. Hayes? Daniel turned his head just enough. The man behind the wheel was older, late 60s maybe. Clean shirt, pressed despite the heat. Eyes sharp behind thin glasses. Not local, or at least, not like the others. Yeah. The man nodded once, like he'd just confirmed something important. Name's Caldwell, he said. I've been looking for you. Daniel didn't step closer. Didn't step away either. Ranger moved to his side again, positioning himself between Daniel and the truck. Quiet. Still. Caldwell noticed. Good dog, he said, but his tone stayed careful. Daniel didn't respond. Caldwell reached across the passenger seat, picking up a thin leather folder. He didn't hand it over yet, just held it there. You didn't stay in town, he said. Didn't need to. Caldwell gave a faint nod. Figured you might not. A pause settled between them. The wind filled it, dragging sand across the road in thin, shifting lines. Then Caldwell held out the folder. "Your uncle left you something," he said. Daniel didn't move right away. "Uncle." The word didn't land right. "I don't have any family out here." "Victor Hale," Caldwell said. That got a reaction. Small. Almost nothing. But it was there. Daniel reached out and took the folder. The leather felt dry, worn, like it had been sitting somewhere untouched for a long time. He opened it. Inside, documents, property records, legal stamps, coordinates, a ranch, farther out than he expected. Daniel flipped through the pages once, quick but thorough, enough to get the shape of it. "Didn't know him," he said. "Most people didn't," Caldwell replied. Daniel glanced up. Caldwell leaned back slightly in his seat, resting one arm along the window frame. "Your uncle kept to himself," he said. "Bought that land years ago. Paid cash. Never explained why." Daniel looked back down at the papers. "Why me?" Caldwell hesitated. "Not long. Just enough to matter. You're the only name he left," he said. Daniel closed the folder. The desert stretched out behind Caldwell's truck. Empty. Quiet. Too quiet. Ranger's ears shifted. Not toward the truck, toward the town. Daniel noticed. Always did. He didn't turn, but his body adjusted slightly, just enough to open his angle without making it obvious. "You go out there much?" Daniel asked. Caldwell's expression changed. "Just a fraction." "No," he said. "And neither does anyone else. Why?" Another pause. Caldwell looked past Daniel for a second, toward the road leading back into town, then back at him. "Because things don't stay buried out there," he said. The words hung in the air. Not dramatic, not exaggerated. Just stated. Daniel studied him, measured the tone, the posture, the eyes. Caldwell wasn't trying to scare him. He was warning him. "Your choice, of course," Caldwell added. "You can sell it. Land's not worth much, but someone might take it off your hands." Daniel didn't answer. Ranger stepped forward slightly, placing himself just ahead of Daniel now, facing the open desert, watching. Caldwell followed the dog's movement. "He's not wrong, you know," he said quietly. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "About what?" Caldwell gave a faint smile. "Dogs don't hesitate like people do," he said. "They either go towards something, or they don't." The wind picked up again, stronger now. Dust rolled across the road in a low wave, briefly blurring the edges of everything. Daniel looked down at the folder in his hands, then out at the desert, then at Ranger. The dog didn't move, didn't look back, just stood there, locked onto something far beyond what Daniel could see. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Where is it?" he asked. Caldwell reached into the truck again, pulling out a folded map. He leaned across and handed it over. 30 miles out," he said. "Past the old irrigation lines. You'll know it when you see it." Daniel took the map. "Anything else I should know?" Caldwell didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah," he said. Daniel waited. Caldwell met his eyes. "Whatever your uncle was doing out there," he said. "It wasn't farming." Silence settled again. He nodded once, then started the truck. "If you're smart," Caldwell added, "you won't stay long." The engine growled, tires turning as the truck pulled back onto the road. It didn't speed off, didn't rush, just left. Daniel stood there, watching until it disappeared into the heat. Then he looked down at the map again. Ranger shifted beside him, impatient. Ready. Daniel folded the map carefully, sliding it into his bag. Yeah, he muttered, his voice low, almost to himself. Guess we'll find out. He stepped forward, back onto the road, this time with direction. Ranger moved ahead immediately, pace steady, body angled toward the open land like he already knew the way. Behind them, the town of Dry Creek faded into the heat, and ahead, the desert waited. Not empty, not silent, just waiting. By the time the ranch came into view, the sun had already begun to dip. Daniel slowed without realizing it. The land flattened out into something wider, emptier. No fences, no fresh tracks, just dry earth stretched thin across rock and time. Then, there it was. The house, if you could still call it that. It sat low against the desert, half swallowed by sand and neglect. The roof sagged slightly in the middle, like it had been carrying too much for too long. Boards along the outer walls had split and curled. One window hung open, broken glass still clinging to the frame. Daniel stopped about 20 yards out. Ranger didn't. The dog moved forward, slow, deliberate. His head lowered slightly, ears forward, reading the place before stepping any closer. Daniel watched him, then shifted his attention outward. Perimeter first. He turned in a slow circle, scanning. No movement, no vehicles, no dust trails in the distance. Wind direction, steady from the west. Sound, minimal. Just air moving through broken wood. Still. Too still. He approached the house. Each step measured, weight placed carefully. The ground near the porch showed signs of old disturbance. Tracks, long faded. Not recent, but not random either. Ranger reached the porch first. He stopped, not at the door, to the left. His head tilted slightly, nose working the air. Daniel noticed, logged it, but didn't move that direction yet. Front door first, always. The wooden steps creaked under his weight as he climbed. The door itself hung slightly off-center, the frame warped just enough to leave a narrow gap. Daniel didn't touch it immediately. He stood to the side, listening. Nothing. No movement inside. No shift in air pressure. He pushed it open with the back of his hand. The hinge gave a low groan. Inside, the temperature dropped just enough to feel wrong. Cooler. Stale. The smell hit next. Dust, dry wood, and something faint underneath. Metal. Old. Daniel stepped in. Left side first. Clear. Right side. Clear. Corners. Ceiling line. Movement patterns. Nothing. Ranger entered behind him but didn't stay close this time. He moved deeper. Daniel noticed that too. Easy, he muttered. The dog didn't respond. Didn't need to. The interior looked frozen. A table near the center of the room, one chair pulled halfway back like someone had just stood up and never returned. A coat hung from a nail on the wall, stiff with dust. A glass bottle sat on a shelf, still upright. Untouched. Not abandoned. Interrupted. Daniel stepped further in, boots echoing softly against the wood floor. Every sound felt louder inside. Too loud. He adjusted automatically, shifting his weight to minimize noise. Old habit? Clear the space like it mattered, because sometimes it still did. The hallway stretched toward the back, doors on either side, some open, some closed. Daniel moved slow, checking each one. Bedroom, empty. Closet, Nothing but old fabric and the faint smell of mildew. Bathroom. Dry, cracked porcelain. Mirror shattered. Ranger stayed ahead. Not wandering, choosing. That was the difference. Daniel paused at the third door. Closed. Handle intact. He crouched slightly, listening again. Nothing. He opened it. Inside. An office. Or what used to be one. Desk. Papers scattered. A map pinned to the wall, edges curled and yellowed. Daniel stepped in. The map caught his attention immediately. Topographic. Marked. Not randomly. Coordinates circled. Lines drawn between points that didn't make sense, unless you knew what you were looking at. His eyes moved across it, tracing patterns. Not roads, not property lines. Something else. He stepped closer. Ranger didn't follow. Daniel turned. The dog stood in the hallway, still, looking past him, toward the far end of the house, not barking, not moving, just locked in. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. Not fear, recognition. He had seen that posture before, in places where things went wrong fast. "Ranger," he said quietly. The dog didn't break focus. Daniel stepped back out into the hallway. The light had shifted. The sun lower now, beams cutting through broken windows, stretching shadows long across the floor. Ranger took one step backward, then another. Not retreating. Repositioning. Daniel followed his line of sight. Nothing. Just the hallway. Still, his breathing changed. Shorter. Controlled. The house creaked. Soft. Almost nothing. But enough. Daniel moved. He crossed the hallway slowly, stopping just short of the far wall. His hand brushed lightly against the surface. Wood. Dry. Cracked. Then, something didn't match. He pressed again. The sound changed. Hollow. Ranger's ears snapped forward. Daniel didn't react outwardly, but his eyes narrowed. He tapped lightly along the wall. Solid. Solid. Then hollow again. A section no wider than a doorframe. Hidden. He stepped back. Looked at it from a different angle. The seam was there. Barely visible. Someone had covered it well, but not perfectly. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he murmured. Behind him, Ranger shifted closer. The dog's body pressed lightly against his leg, grounding him. Daniel rested his hand briefly against the dog's neck. Warm, real. Then he looked back at the wall, at the hidden space behind it, at whatever had been sealed inside. The wind outside picked up. It pushed against the house, slipping through cracks, whispering through the broken frame. The sound echoed through the hallway. For a second, just a second, it wasn't wind anymore. It was something else. Radio static, a voice cutting in. "Hayes, do you copy?" Daniel blinked. The hallway snapped back. Silence again. His jaw tightened. He stepped away from the wall. Not yet. He turned, scanning the room one more time. Angles, exits, entry points. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. Ranger didn't move, still watching the wall, still waiting. Daniel picked up his bag from the floor near the entrance, slinging it over his shoulder. "We'll come back to it," he said quietly. The dog didn't argue. They moved back into the main room together. The last of the sunlight slipped through the broken windows, casting the house into shadow, and behind them, the wall stayed silent, but not empty, not forgotten. Just waiting. The night didn't settle over the ranch. It pressed down. Daniel sat on the floor with his back against the main wall, facing the front door. Not relaxed, not resting, just positioned. The way he used to sit inside half-cleared structures, waiting for something that might never come. Ranger lay a few feet ahead, not asleep. His head rested low between his paws, but his eyes stayed open, tracking every shift in shadow, every whisper of movement through the broken frame of the house. The wind moved through the boards again, a low, uneven whistle. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of his sleeve. For a second, it sounded like incoming. Not wind, not here. A memory pushed in fast, too fast. Night, dust, heat that didn't belong to this place. Voices over comms, breaking, cutting out. Haze, we're taking... Silence. Daniel blinked once. The house came back. The desert. The cold. He exhaled slowly, forcing his breathing back into rhythm. In. Hold. Out. Ranger's head lifted. Not toward Daniel, toward the door. Then he stood. No warning, no sound, just up. Daniel didn't ask why. He was already moving. He pushed himself off the wall, staying low, shifting his angle toward the side of the doorway. One step, then another. Weight controlled, floor tested before committing. Ranger moved ahead, not rushing, guiding. He stopped at the threshold, nose tilted toward the outside air. Then he stepped out. Daniel followed. The desert had changed. Same land, same horizon. But something felt off. The wind had dropped, too suddenly. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It held. Ranger walked past the porch, moving out into the open dirt. His pace slowed as he approached a spot about 15 yards from the house. He stopped. Daniel stayed back. Watched. The dog's posture shifted. Ears forward. Body still. Not defensive. Focused. Daniel approached carefully, circling slightly instead of walking straight in. Old instinct. Never approach a point head-on if you don't know what's there. He reached Ranger's side, looked down. At first, nothing. Just dirt. Dry. Cracked. Same as everywhere else. Then, he crouched, ran his fingers across the surface. The top layer was loose, but underneath, different. Not packed the same, not natural. Daniel pressed harder. The soil gave slightly under pressure. His eyes narrowed. He shifted position, brushing away more of the top layer with his hand. Dust lifted, carried away by the faint wind returning. And then he saw it. A thin, circular edge, metal, barely exposed. Daniel paused. Ranger didn't move, didn't look away. He already knew. Daniel cleared more of the dirt. Slow, deliberate. The shape came into view small, no wider than a dinner plate. A capped pipe, rusted but intact. An air vent. Daniel sat back slightly. His mind moved fast now. Vent meant space. Sealed space meant something below. He looked out across the desert again. Nothing. No lights. No movement. But the feeling didn't go away. This wasn't abandoned. It had been hidden. Ranger stepped back once, giving him space. Daniel leaned forward again, brushing the rest of the dirt from the vent. It wasn't random placement. It was intentional. Camouflaged just enough to disappear unless you were looking for it. Or unless you had a reason to stop right here. Daniel glanced at Ranger. "Yeah," he muttered. The dog didn't respond. Didn't need to. Daniel stood slowly, scanning the area again. His eyes traced lines across the terrain, patterns, subtle dips in the ground, shifts in color. Then he saw it. Faint. A difference in how the soil settled in a wider circle around them. Buried. Something big. He stepped back another few feet, reevaluated, mapped it out. The house behind him, the wall inside, the hollow section. And now this. It lined up. Too clean. Too deliberate. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked back at the house, then down at the vent, then back at Ranger. The dog's tail didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the ground. Waiting. Daniel exhaled slowly. Not a ranch, he said under his breath. The wind picked up again, stronger now, pushing sand across the open space. It brushed over the metal edge, almost covering it again, like the desert itself was trying to hide it. Daniel stepped forward and placed his boot lightly against the ground near the vent, tested it. The surface shifted just enough to confirm it. Hollow beneath. He stepped back immediately. No noise. No unnecessary pressure. He looked out across the horizon one more time. Still nothing. But the feeling in his chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. He had walked into places like this before. Structures hidden beneath nothing. Operations that didn't exist on paper. Places where people went in and didn't come back. Ranger moved closer, pressing lightly against his leg again, grounding him. Daniel rested his hand briefly on the dog's head. Yeah, he said quietly, his voice steady now. We're not alone out here. The wind carried the words away. The desert stretched wide and empty in every direction. But now Daniel knew better. He looked down at the vent again, then toward the house, then out into the distance. And somewhere deep in his instincts, something shifted. This wasn't just land. This was a site. And whatever was buried beneath it had been meant to stay that way. Daniel didn't dig. Not yet. He covered the vent again, brushing sand back over it with careful movements, restoring the surface just enough to hide the edge. Not perfect, but enough to delay attention. Ranger watched the entire time, still, focused. When Daniel stood, the sun had dropped lower, casting long shadows across the open land. The ranch looked different now, smaller, less like a ruin, more like a lid. Daniel turned toward the house. We wait, he said quietly. Ranger didn't argue. The next morning came fast. Daniel hadn't slept. Not really. He had stayed inside, back to the wall again, eyes adjusting to darkness, listening to every shift in wind, every creak in the frame. At some point, the sky had lightened without him noticing. Ranger had never fully laid down, just repositioned, always facing outward. Daniel stepped onto the porch just after sunrise. The desert looked clean again. Wind had smoothed over tracks, erased edges, softened everything into the same endless stretch of nothing. But Daniel knew what was under it now. That changed everything. He scanned the horizon, left, right, far ridge. Nothing. Then, a shape. Distant, low, moving. Daniel didn't move. His breathing slowed automatically, his stance shifting just enough to stay relaxed, but ready. Ranger stepped forward, body angled slightly ahead of him. The shape grew clearer. A vehicle. Black. Coming in slow. Not lost. Not wandering. Direct. Daniel stepped back once, positioning himself just off the porch, giving himself space between the doorway and open ground. Angle control. Always. The vehicle stopped about 50 yards out. Engine still running. Dust settled slowly around it. No one stepped out at first. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Mid-40s, maybe. Clean lines, clean clothes. Completely wrong for this place. He closed the door gently. No rush, no wasted movement. Daniel watched his hands. Empty. But that didn't mean anything. The man walked forward. Not fast, not cautious. Controlled. Ranger's growl started low. Deep. Daniel placed a hand lightly against his neck. Easy. The dog didn't stop, but he didn't move either. The man stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react. His eyes moved once, quick, precise, taking in the house, the porch, Ranger, Daniel, then back to Daniel. "Daniel Hayes," he said. Not a question. Daniel didn't answer. The man gave a faint nod. "Good," he said. "Saves time." Silence settled between them. The wind picked up slightly, pushing dust across the space. The man slid his hands into his pockets. Relaxed. Too relaxed. "You've had time to look around," he said. Daniel's expression didn't change. "Not much to see," he replied. The man smiled. Not friendly, not amused, just knowing. "That's not true," he said. Ranger's growl deepened. The man glanced down at him briefly. "Impressive," he said. "Most dogs would have run by now." Daniel didn't take the bait. "Say what you came to say." The man looked back up, studied him for a second longer, then nodded once. "Fair enough." He took a step closer. Ranger shifted immediately, blocking the space, but so. The man stopped, acknowledged the line, didn't cross it. "Whatever you think you found," he said calmly, "it's not yours." Daniel didn't blink. The words landed exactly where they were meant to. He let a second pass, then another. "Don't know what you're talking about," he said. The man held his gaze. "You will," he replied. Another pause. Longer this time. The desert stretched out around them, silent except for the wind. Daniel's mind moved fast. Distance. Vehicle position. Second passenger? He angled slightly, catching a reflection in the windshield. Nothing. Or nothing obvious. The man spoke again. "There are places," he said, "that exist for a reason, and that reason doesn't include you." Daniel shifted his weight slightly. "Funny," he said. "Seems like it does." The man's smile faded. "Not entirely. Just enough. You were given something you don't understand," he said. "That's not your fault." His tone stayed calm, measured, controlled. "But digging into it?" he added quietly. "That is." Ranger stepped forward half a step. Teeth just visible now. The man didn't move, didn't flinch. That was the part Daniel noticed. Not the words, not the warning, the lack of reaction. Training. Same as him, different side. Daniel's voice dropped slightly. "You here to threaten me?" The man tilted his head just a fraction. "No," he said. "A beat. I'm here to help you avoid a mistake." The wind shifted again, stronger now, pushing heat and dust across the open ground. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What mistake?" The man held his gaze. "Opening something," he said. "That was sealed for a reason." Silence. Daniel didn't respond. Didn't need to. The man stepped back. Decision made. "Leave it buried," he said. The same words. Calm. Certain. Then he turned, walked back to the vehicle. No rush, no hesitation. The engine never shut off. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away, slow at first, then faster, disappearing back into the desert. Daniel stood there, watching until it was gone. Ranger's growl faded slowly, but he didn't relax. Not fully. Daniel exhaled once, long, controlled. Then he turned back toward the house, toward the ground beneath it, toward the place he now knew was being watched. "Yeah," he muttered, his voice quiet, but certain. Too late for that. Ranger looked up at him. Daniel met his eyes. "We're opening it." The wind picked up again, and somewhere out there, far beyond what he could see, something had already started moving. Daniel didn't wait for it to arrive. He moved. By midday, the sun had burned away any trace of cool air. Heat pressed down hard across the ranch, turning every surface into something sharp and bright. Daniel worked through it without slowing. Ranger stayed close, closer than before. Every few seconds, the dog would lift his head, scanning the horizon, then return his focus to the ground where Daniel was digging. The spot hadn't changed. The vent still sat just beneath the surface, barely hidden now. Around it, Daniel had cleared a wider circle, exposing packed dirt that didn't belong in open desert. He didn't use a shovel, didn't trust the noise. Instead, he worked with a rusted metal bar he'd found behind the house. Slow leverage, controlled force, breaking the ground without drawing attention beyond what the wind could carry away. Each strike was measured, not fast, not loud, just enough. The soil gave way in layers, loose sand, then packed earth, then something else. Hard. Daniel paused, wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. His breathing stayed steady, but his chest tightened slightly as he shifted position. "Almost there," he muttered. Ranger stood immediately, ears forward, body stiff, not reacting to the digging, reacting to something else. Daniel noticed. He always did. He stopped moving, listened. Nothing. Just wind. Just heat. Still, Ranger didn't relax. Daniel went back to work. The metal bar struck again. This time, it rang. Dull, solid, different. Daniel cleared the remaining dirt with his hands. And then it was there. A flat surface, steel, wide, far wider than the vent had suggested. Daniel leaned back slightly, taking it in. A hatch, buried deep, edges reinforced. No visible handle on top, no markings, except faint, almost worn away. Stenciled letters along one edge. He brushed more dirt away. The letters came into view. Faded. Military. His jaw tightened. He didn't read them out loud. Didn't need to. He already understood. This wasn't storage. This wasn't someone hiding money or supplies. This was something built, engineered, sealed. Ranger let out a low growl. Daniel looked up. The dog wasn't watching the hatch. He was watching the horizon again. Same direction as before. Daniel followed his gaze. Still nothing. But the feeling, it was back. Stronger now. Daniel shifted his grip on the metal bar. "Almost done," he said quietly. More to himself than the dog. He wedged the bar into the seam along the hatch's edge, tested it. No movement. He adjusted the angle, pushed again. Nothing. The metal hadn't been opened in years, maybe longer. Daniel planted his boots, leaned his weight into it. The bar flexed slightly. The hatch didn't. He stepped back, breathing slower now, thinking. Then he moved to the opposite side. Same seam, different angle. He drove the bar in harder this time. A sharp crack echoed through the ground. Ranger stepped back instantly, alert, ready. Daniel didn't stop. He pushed again, harder. Another crack, then movement. Small, but enough. The seal broke. A thin line opened along the edge. Air escaped. Cold. Not just cool, cold. Daniel froze. That didn't belong here. Not in this heat. Not this deep. Ranger's growl returned. Louder now. Daniel ignored it. He shifted position, forcing the gap wider. The hatch resisted, then gave. With a heavy, grinding sound, it lifted just enough for him to grip the edge. He set the bar aside and pulled. The hatch rose slowly. Heavy, reinforced, it fought him the entire way. Until finally, it opened. A dark space yawned beneath it. No light, no sound, just depth. Daniel stood over it, breathing steady. The air coming from below was colder now, stale, metallic. He crouched slightly, peering in, nothing visible beyond a few feet. Then edges, concrete, a vertical shaft, and metal rungs bolted into the wall. A ladder. Ranger didn't come closer. He stayed back, watching. Daniel reached into his bag, pulling out a small flashlight. He hesitated. Just a second, then clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, straight down, 10 feet, 20, more, until it hit bottom. A floor, concrete, clean, too clean. Daniel's grip tightened on the flashlight. This wasn't abandoned, not fully. He swung the light slightly. The beam caught something. A doorway. At the base of the ladder. Reinforced. Open. Leading deeper. Daniel exhaled slowly. The air from below carried a faint scent now. Metal. Dust. And something else. Something familiar. Too familiar. For a second, the beam in his hand became something else. A weapon light. Cutting through a hallway half a world away. Voices in his ear. Haze, stack up. Daniel blinked. The desert snapped back. The hatch. The ladder. The darkness. He lowered the flashlight slightly. Ranger shifted. One step forward this time, then stopped again. Waiting. Daniel looked down at him, then back into the hole. His jaw tightened. Yeah, he murmured, his voice steady again. We're going in. He set one foot onto the first rung, tested it, solid, then the next. The light stayed steady in his hand as he descended. Ranger watched from above, silent, still. Daniel reached the bottom, turned, swept the light across the floor. Empty. No movement. No sound. But the doorway ahead, that was where it led. Deeper. Daniel stepped forward, boots hitting concrete with a dull echo. The temperature dropped further. The air heavier now. He moved toward the doorway. Slow, measured. Just before crossing the threshold, he paused, turned his head slightly, looking back up. Ranger stood at the edge of the hatch, looking down at him. Not afraid, not hesitant, just waiting. Daniel gave a small nod, then stepped through, into whatever had been buried beneath the ranch, and whatever it was, it had been waiting for someone to finally open the door. The corridor stretched out ahead of Daniel, narrow and clean in a way that didn't belong underground. Concrete walls, no cracks, no collapse, preserved. His boots echoed softly as he stepped forward, the sound traveling farther than it should have. The air was colder here, steady, controlled, like it had been sealed away from the desert for years, maybe longer. Daniel kept the flashlight low, sweeping corners first. Left, right, ceiling. No wires, no obvious sensors. Still, he moved like there were. Ranger dropped down from the hatch behind him. Silent landing. Daniel didn't turn, but his shoulders loosened just slightly. The dog padded forward, staying tight to his left side now, closer than before. That meant something. The hallway opened into a wider room. Daniel slowed, then stopped. The beam of light cut across metal, rows of it, cases, stacked, organized, untouched. For a second, Daniel didn't move. His brain processed shape first, then pattern, then reality. He stepped closer, crouched, ran his fingers across the nearest case. Dustless, cold. The latch snapped open with a sharp click that echoed too loud in the room. Inside, cash, bundled, sealed, stacked tight. Daniel stared at it, didn't touch it, didn't react, just took it in. Ranger didn't even look. The dog had already moved on. Daniel opened the next case. Gold, bars, stamped, heavy, real. He lifted one just enough to feel the weight, then set it back down. Slow, measured. His jaw tightened slightly. 250, he muttered under his breath. Maybe more. It was enough to disappear, enough to never come back, enough to erase everything that came before. The thought didn't stay long. It never did. Ranger let out a low sound, not a growl. Something else. Daniel turned. The dog stood near the far wall, not interested in the money, focused somewhere else. Of course he was. Daniel closed the case. The sound of the latch snapping shut echoed again. Louder this time. Or maybe it just felt that way. He stood. Followed. The far side of the room looked different. Less organized. Less staged. There was another door, partially open. Daniel approached slowly. Flashlight up now. The beam cut into the darkness beyond. Another room, smaller. Not for storage, for work. Tables, chairs, metal surfaces bolted to the floor. And along the wall, cabinets. Daniel stepped inside. The air shifted. He felt it before he understood it. Different kind of cold. Different kind of silence. He moved to the nearest cabinet. Opened it. Files. Stacked. Labeled. His hand paused for half a second. Then he pulled one free. Opened it. The first page. Redacted lines. Coordinates. Operation names. His eyes scanned faster now. Professional. Automatic. Then a list. Names. He froze. The flashlight beam trembled slightly. Just enough. He steadied it. Read again. Names. Ranks. Units. Locations. Marked. Final status. Missing. Daniel's breathing slowed. Not calm. Controlled. He flipped the page. More names. More units. Same pattern. Then one line. One name. Everything stopped. Cole Ramirez. The room disappeared. Not all of it. Just enough. Sand. Heat. Radio static screaming in his ear. Haze, we lost him. Gunfire somewhere to the right. Dust in his mouth. No extraction. No second chance. Daniel blinked. The room came back. Concrete. Cold. Silent. The file in his hand. His grip tightened. The paper crumpled slightly under his fingers. No, he said quietly. Not denial. Recognition. Ranger stepped closer, pressed against his leg. Grounding. Daniel exhaled slowly, his jaw locked tight. He flipped through more pages. Same structure. Same markings, different names. All missing, all gone. Or supposed to be. He looked back toward the main room, toward the cases, the money, the gold, then back at the file. The money is bait. The words formed in his head before he even realized it, not from the file, from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. He closed the folder slowly, set it down, then opened another. Same pattern, same truth. Buried under value. Hidden beneath something people would focus on first. Something that would keep them from looking deeper. Daniel stepped back from the table. The weight in his chest shifted. Not fear, not confusion. Something heavier. Anger. Cold. Focused. Ranger's ears snapped up. Daniel didn't hear it at first. He was still looking at the names, still seeing one name in particular. Then, a sound. Faint. Distant. Metal above them. Daniel froze, his head tilted slightly. Listening. There. Again. A soft scrape. Then silence. Ranger's body went rigid. Daniel's hand moved instinctively to his side, where nothing was. His fingers curled anyway. Muscle memory. He stepped toward the doorway slowly. Lights off. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Only the faint glow from the corridor remained. Daniel moved into shadow. Breathing slowed, measured, controlled. Above them, another sound. Closer this time. Not the wind. Not the house settling. Footsteps. Daniel's eyes hardened. They weren't alone anymore. And whoever was up there, they hadn't come for the money. They had come for him. Daniel didn't move. Not right away. He stood in the dark just beyond the doorway, letting his eyes adjust to what little light leaked in from the corridor. His breathing slowed until it almost disappeared. Ranger pressed close against his leg. Silent. Waiting. Above them, another sound. Faint. Measured. Not searching. Not careless. Someone who already knew where to look. Daniel tilted his head slightly, tracking it. Position. Distance. 2, maybe 3. Weight distribution through the floor. He pictured the house above them, the layout he'd cleared earlier, the main room, the hallway, the hidden wall. If they had found the hatch, they were already too close. Daniel stepped back into the smaller room, moving along the edge where shadow was thickest. His hand brushed the metal table, steadying himself, grounding the moment. His mind didn't race. It narrowed. One path at a time. He reached down, picking up the file he had dropped. Cole Ramirez. The name stared back at him in the faint light. Daniel's grip tightened. For a second, the present slipped again. A voice in his ear, cutting through static. Hayes, don't leave me. Gunfire. Dust. Silence where there shouldn't have been silence. Daniel blinked. The underground room snapped back into place. Concrete. Cold. Still. But not empty. Ranger's ears twitched. Daniel looked down at him. The dog's eyes weren't on the door. They were on the corridor. Locked. Focused. Daniel understood. "They're moving," he whispered. Ranger didn't react. Didn't need to. Daniel set the file down carefully. Not thrown. Not dropped. Placed. Then he reached for the flashlight and clicked it off completely. Darkness swallowed everything. Above, a heavier sound. Closer now. Wood shifting. Weight near the hatch. Daniel stepped toward the doorway again, staying low, keeping his shoulder against the wall. He moved like he had before. Angles, corners, lines of sight. He stopped just before the opening. Listened. A voice. Muted. Controlled. Check inside. Not loud. Not rushed. Professionals. Daniel's jaw tightened. His hand moved again. Instinct. Reaching for something that wasn't there. Weapon. Gone. Still gone. He adjusted. Improvised. Always did. Ranger shifted slightly ahead of him. Daniel placed a hand against his neck. "Wait," he breathed. The dog froze instantly. Above, metal. A faint scrape. Then, the sound of something being moved. The hatch. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. Measured it. They had found it. Of course they had. He stepped back deeper into the corridor, pulling Ranger with him, moving away from the base of the ladder. Not running. Repositioning. If they came down, they would come focused on the obvious. The main room, the money. That gave him seconds. Maybe. Daniel moved into the storage room again, scanning fast. Cases, stacks, metal surfaces. Nothing useful, nothing immediate. He looked back toward the smaller room. Files, tables, tighter space, less exposure. He moved. Ranger stayed glued to his side. Daniel stepped inside, pressing himself against the wall just inside the doorway, leaving the opening partially visible. A choke point. Not ideal, but controlled. He slowed his breathing again. Counted. In. Hold. Out. Above. The hatch opened. The sound carried clean through the shaft. Then silence. No voices now. Just presence. Then, a shadow crossed the top of the ladder. Daniel's eyes locked onto it. A boot appeared. Careful. Testing the rung. Then another. Descending. Slow. Disciplined. Daniel didn't move. Ranger didn't move. The first man reached the bottom. Daniel saw only outlines. Dark clothing. Gloves. Face partially covered. The man stepped off the ladder. Paused. Listening. Then turned. Flashlight beam snapped on, cutting through the room. Daniel stayed still. The light passed over the cases, the money, the gold. The man didn't react, didn't pause. He swept the beam once more, then gestured upward. Another figure descended. 2. Daniel counted. The second man hit the ground. Both moved now, not toward the money, toward the corridor, toward the smaller room, toward him. Ranger's muscles tensed. Daniel felt it. Placed a hand against him again. "Not yet," he whispered. The men moved closer, steps controlled, spacing tight, one covering, one advancing. They reached the doorway. The beam of light cut across the edge. Closer, closer. Then, Ranger moved, fast, silent, explosive. He hit the first man low, driving him off balance before the beam could adjust. The flashlight swung wide, slamming against the wall as the man went down hard. The second man reacted instantly. Too slow. Daniel stepped in. No hesitation. He grabbed the man's arm, redirected the momentum, drove him sideways into the metal table with a sharp impact that knocked the breath out of him. Everything happened in seconds, controlled chaos. Ranger held the first man pinned, teeth bared, a deep growl vibrating through the room. Daniel forced the second man down, locking his arm just enough to keep him from moving. Silence slammed back into place. Heavy, tight. The flashlight rolled across the floor, casting uneven light across the walls. Daniel leaned in slightly. "You shouldn't have come down here," he said quietly. The man didn't respond. His breathing was controlled, trained, same as Daniel. That was the part that mattered. Not fear, not panic, just calculation. Daniel's eyes hardened. "You already knew what was here," he said. A pause. Then the man spoke. Low, flat. "You opened it." Daniel didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it. Didn't need to. The man's eyes flicked briefly toward the files behind Daniel. That was enough. Daniel saw it. Understood it. "They're not here for the money," he murmured. Ranger's growl deepened. The man didn't look at the dog. He looked at Daniel. "You don't understand what you've stepped into," he said. Daniel held his gaze. "No," he replied. "A beat." "Then I think I do." The air shifted. The balance changed. This wasn't a warning anymore. This wasn't someone trying to scare him off. They had come prepared. They had come quiet. And they had come ready to leave with nothing except certainty. Daniel released the man slowly, stepping back just enough to create space. Not surrender. Recalculation. The man didn't move immediately. Neither did the other. Ranger stayed ready. Daniel's eyes moved between them, then toward the corridor, then back. A decision forming. Because whatever this place was, whatever had been buried here, it wasn't just history. It was still active, still protected. And now he was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. Daniel moved first. Not fast, not aggressive. Just enough to break the moment before it broke him. "Get up," he said quietly. The two men didn't argue. They rose slowly, controlled, eyes never leaving him. No sudden moves. No panic. That confirmed it again. They weren't hired muscle. They were trained, same as him. Different orders. Ranger stayed between them, low and ready, a warning that didn't need to be repeated. Daniel stepped back toward the corridor, giving space but not control. "Back up the ladder," he said. The first man glanced at the second. A look. Quick. Then they moved. One at a time. No hesitation. No resistance. That part didn't sit right. Daniel watched them climb. Listened to each movement, each shift of weight through the metal rungs. Ranger didn't relax until the second man disappeared through the hatch above. Then, silence. Daniel stood there for a long second. Too long. Something in his chest tightened. Wrong. He moved. Fast. Back toward the ladder. Up. 3 rungs at a time. Ranger followed without waiting. They reached the surface together. The desert had changed. The sun was gone. Night had settled in fast and hard, swallowing everything beyond a few yards. The wind had died again, leaving the air heavy and still. Too still. Daniel stepped out of the hatch, scanned, left, right. Nothing. No vehicle, No lights, no movement. Gone. Just like that. Ranger circled once, nose low, tracking, then stopped. His body stiffened, facing the house. Daniel followed his gaze. The front door, slightly open. Daniel didn't remember leaving it that way. His jaw tightened. Contact, he muttered under his breath. Ranger's ears snapped forward. Daniel moved low across the dirt, angling wide instead of heading straight in. He approached the house from the side, using the broken wall as partial cover. Step, pause, listen. Nothing. Then inside, a shift. Barely there. Daniel stopped, counted. 1, 2, 3. Then he moved, fast, through the side opening instead of the door. Clear left, clear right. The main room looked the same. At first, then he saw it. The chair. Moved, just a few inches. But enough. Daniel's breathing slowed, focused. Ranger slipped ahead of him, silent. Then, movement. Back hallway. Daniel pivoted. A shadow broke from the darkness. Close. Too close. Daniel reacted on instinct. He stepped in, redirecting the momentum, driving the figure into the wall with controlled force. The impact echoed through the house. Another figure moved behind it. Ranger hit him before Daniel could. A blur of muscle and instinct, slamming into the man's side, forcing him off balance. A sharp sound cut through the air. Too sharp, too fast. Ranger yelped, short, controlled. But it hit. Daniel's world narrowed instantly. He drove forward, pushing the first man down, locking him against the floor just long enough to break his position. The second man stumbled back, pulling away from Ranger. Smoke, gray, thick, filling the hallway in seconds. Daniel cursed under his breath. Tango break contact, he muttered. The men didn't stay, didn't fight. They withdrew, fast. By the time the air cleared, they were gone. Again. Daniel stood still, chest rising slow, controlled. Then he turned. Ranger stood a few feet away. Not down, not panicking. Just still. Daniel dropped to one knee beside him. Let me see. Ranger didn't resist. Didn't flinch. Daniel's hands moved quickly, checking. There. A shallow cut along the shoulder. Not deep, but enough. Daniel's jaw tightened. Damn it! Ranger licked once, then looked past him again. Still watching. Still working. Daniel exhaled slowly, running his hand gently along the dog's neck. You're good, he said quietly. More for himself than the dog. Ranger stayed pressed close, didn't move away. Daniel stood, looked around the house again. Everything in place. Nothing taken. Not the bag. Not the supplies. Not even the papers on the table. He turned toward the hatch, then back toward the hallway. They didn't come for the money, he said. Ranger's ears flicked. Daniel's eyes hardened. They didn't even come to take anything. A long silence followed. The realization settled in slow, heavy, cold. They came to see how much I know. Ranger stepped closer. Daniel looked down at him, then back at the darkness of the hallway, at the house, at everything buried beneath it. His grip tightened into a fist. Which means, he continued quietly, they're not done. Outside, far across the desert, engines rumbled, low, distant, but moving closer. Daniel didn't need to see them, didn't need confirmation. He already knew. This wasn't over, not even close. He turned toward the hatch, then toward his bag, then back to Ranger. The dog held his gaze, steady, unshaken. Daniel nodded once. "All right," he said, his voice calm now, cold. "We don't wait anymore." The wind picked up again, carrying dust across the open land, and somewhere out there, they were coming back. This time, not to warn him, but to finish it. Daniel didn't run. He moved with purpose. The engines in the distance weren't close yet, but they were coming steady, low, controlled, not fast. That meant confidence. That meant they thought time was still on their side. Daniel stepped back down through the hatch. Ranger followed without hesitation, despite the stiffness in his shoulder. The cold air below wrapped around them again. Different now, not just hidden, exposed. Daniel moved straight past the money, didn't look at it, didn't slow. Ranger stayed tight beside him, ignoring the rows of gold and cash like they didn't exist, because they didn't matter, not anymore. Daniel reached the smaller room and went straight to the files. Fast now, efficient. He pulled open drawers, scanning labels, flipping pages, stacking what mattered in quick piles. His eyes moved faster than his hands. Names, dates, operations, missing, missing, missing. The same pattern over and over again. Then, a different file. Thicker, marked. Not hidden, but not obvious either. Daniel opened it. The first page was handwritten, not typed, not official, personal. His eyes moved across the lines. "The money is bait." He stopped. Read it again. Then turned the page. Command needed a cover, something valuable enough to keep anyone from digging deeper. Daniel's grip tightened. He flipped another page. "We were told it was asset recovery. That's what they called it. But when we got there..." The writing changed. Less controlled, more rushed. The assets weren't objects. Daniel's breathing slowed. They were people. The room seemed smaller, the walls closer. Ranger shifted beside him, pressing against his leg again, grounding. Daniel kept reading. "We saw things we weren't supposed to see, names that didn't exist, operations that never happened." Another page. They couldn't control it, so they erased it. Daniel swallowed once, hard. "They erased us." Silence filled the room, heavy, thick. Daniel flipped further. Lists, names again, but this time, not missing, confirmed, tagged, processed. He found it. Cole Ramirez. Not marked KIA, not missing, marked transferred. No location, no record, no extraction. Daniel's hand trembled once, just once. Then it stopped. The past hit harder this time. Not fragments, not flashes. Clear. Cole laughing in the heat. Cole checking his gear before deployment. Cole's voice over comms. "Hayes, we'll be out in 10. Then silence. Daniel blinked. The room snapped back. Concrete. Cold. Truth. "They didn't die," he said quietly. Ranger's ears flicked. Daniel's voice hardened. They were erased. He looked back toward the main room, toward the money, toward the gold. "It's not the prize," he said. "It's the distraction." The realization settled fully now. Everything lined up. The warning, the men, the silence. They weren't protecting the money. They were protecting what it covered. Daniel closed the file slowly, carefully. Then he started moving again. Fast. He grabbed everything that mattered. The handwritten journal, the lists, the documents with names, coordinates, proof. He shoved them into his bag without overpacking. Only what he could carry. Only what mattered. Ranger moved to the doorway again, watching, guarding. Daniel zipped the bag shut, then stopped. Just for a second. He looked back at the room, at the files still left behind, at the truth still buried here. His jaw tightened. "They're coming back for this," he said. Ranger didn't move. Daniel nodded once. "Good," he added quietly. "Let them." He turned, moved back toward the ladder. Each step faster now, more certain. The hesitation was gone. The confusion was gone. All that remained was purpose. He climbed up into the night. Ranger right behind him. The desert greeted them again with heat and wind. But now it felt different, not empty, not quiet, active, alive. Daniel scanned the horizon. Lights, faint, closer now. Multiple vehicles, closing distance. He adjusted the strap on his bag, then looked down at Ranger. "You ready?" he asked. Ranger held his gaze, didn't hesitate. Daniel nodded once. "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "Cold. Me too." He turned away from the ranch, from the buried site, from the past, and started moving. Because now, it wasn't about finding the truth anymore. It was about making sure it survived. Daniel didn't head back toward town, not directly. He cut wide through the desert, using terrain instead of roads. Low ridges, dry washes, broken ground that forced slower movement, but gave him control over visibility. Ranger kept pace beside him, despite the wound, despite the blood that had dried along his shoulder. He didn't fall behind, didn't hesitate. Daniel noticed. He always noticed. "Easy," he muttered once, low. Ranger flicked an ear, kept moving. Behind them, headlights crested the ridge near the ranch. Faint, but steady. Tracking. Daniel didn't look back again. He already knew. They reached the road just before dawn. An old truck sat abandoned near a broken fence line. Rusted, but intact enough. Daniel checked it. Door unlocked. Keys still in the ignition. Luck didn't exist, but timing did. He climbed in. Ranger jumped up beside him without needing the command. The engine coughed once, twice, then turned over. Daniel pulled onto the road. Not fast. Not yet. He let the truck settle into motion, dust rising behind them in a long trail that stretched out across the empty land. Then he accelerated. The town came into view again. Dry creek, same buildings, same silence, but this time, it felt different. Eyes followed him, more than before. Doors half open, conversations cut short. Daniel didn't stop until he reached the diner. He stepped inside. The bell rang overhead. Every head turned. Ranger walked in first, then Daniel. The same waitress from before stood behind the counter. Clara. Her expression shifted the moment she saw him. "You're still here," she said quietly. Daniel didn't sit. "I need a name," he replied. The room stilled. Clara glanced toward the back, then back at him. "What kind of name?" she asked. "Someone who used to ask questions," Daniel said. "A long time ago." A pause. Then a man at the counter spoke. "You talking about Shaw?" Daniel turned. The man didn't look at him directly, just sipped his coffee. "Derek Shaw," he added. Clara hesitated, then reached under the counter, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She slid it across. "Last place anyone saw him," she said. Daniel took it. Read the address once, memorized it. Thank you, he said. Clara leaned closer, her voice lower now. They'll come here, she said. Daniel nodded. I know. He turned to leave. The man at the counter spoke again. You think you're the first one to go looking into that place? Daniel didn't stop. No, he said. The man exhaled slowly. Then you better be the last, he muttered. The road to Shaw's place cut through open desert. No signs, no traffic, just distance. Daniel drove steady, eyes moving between the road and the mirror. Ranger stayed upright, watching both directions. The truck rattled over uneven ground. The sun climbed higher. Then movement. In the mirror, a vehicle, far back, following. Daniel's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. Yeah, he murmured. They're not done. Ranger's ears lifted. Daniel didn't slow. Didn't speed up either. He waited. Measured distance. Then the turn came. A narrow dirt path, barely visible. Daniel took it without warning. The truck bounced hard as it left the main road, dust exploding behind them in a thick cloud. The terrain shifted fast, tighter, rougher, rocks rising on both sides. The following vehicle didn't hesitate. It turned in after them. Daniel exhaled once. Good, he said quietly. Come on. He pushed the truck harder. The engine strained. The path narrowed further, then opened suddenly into a dry basin. Flat, wide, nowhere to hide. Except, at the far end, a structure, old, metal, half collapsed. Daniel drove straight toward it. Didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He pulled in behind it, cutting the engine immediately. Silence dropped. Heavy, absolute. He stepped out, Ranger beside him, already alert. Daniel moved along the edge of the structure, positioning himself in shadow. The dust cloud behind them still hung in the air. Then, the vehicle appeared, breaking through it. Slow, controlled. It stopped. Doors opened. 2 men stepped out. Then, the third, the man in the suit. Same calm, same control. He walked forward, stopped just outside the structure. This doesn't need to continue, he said. Daniel stepped out from cover, Ranger at his side. It already has, Daniel replied. The man studied him, then glanced briefly at the bag over Daniel's shoulder. You found it, he said. Daniel didn't answer. Didn't need to. The man nodded slightly. Then you understand why it can't leave this place. Daniel's voice stayed flat. No, he said. A pause. Then, I understand exactly why it has to. Silence stretched between them. The desert held it. The man sighed once, barely noticeable. You're making a choice, he said. Daniel met his eyes. Yeah, he replied. I am. Ranger shifted beside him. Steady, unshaken. The man's gaze lingered for a moment longer. Then he nodded once. Then we're done talking, he said. He turned, walked back toward the vehicle. The others followed. No rush, no anger. Just decision. The engine started. The vehicle pulled away. Dust swallowed it again. Daniel didn't move. Didn't follow. He stood there until it disappeared completely. Then he exhaled slowly. Ranger leaned lightly against his leg. Daniel looked down at him. Then back at the road. Then at the address in his pocket. Next step, he said quietly. Ranger stepped forward. Ready. Daniel followed. Because now, there was only one thing left to do. Tell the truth. Before they made sure no one ever could. Derek Shaw's house didn't look like much. A single-story structure, weather-beaten and half-hidden behind a rusted fence line. Satellite dish tilted sideways. Windows covered from the inside. The kind of place people passed without remembering. Daniel didn't knock right away. He stood there, scanning. Angles, entry points, no visible movement. Ranger stayed close, body angled toward the door, ears forward. Daniel knocked once. Nothing. Then, "Go away," a voice called from inside. Rough, tired, still sharp. Daniel didn't move. "Derek Shaw," he said calmly. "You used to write about things people didn't want talked about." Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, measured. The door opened just enough to show one eye. Then the rest of the man, mid-50s, unshaven, but his gaze, clear, focused. "You brought trouble with you," Derek said. Daniel nodded once. "Yeah," he replied. "I did." A long pause. Then Derek stepped back. "Get inside." The house smelled like paper and dust, stacks of files, old equipment, monitors that looked like they hadn't been turned on in years, or maybe just yesterday. Daniel didn't waste time. He pulled the documents from his bag, set them on the table, the journal on top. Derek froze. His eyes moved across the pages, faster than expected. "You don't even know what you've got," Derek muttered. Daniel's voice stayed steady. "I've got enough." Derek looked up. "They'll bury you for this." Daniel didn't blink. They already tried. A beat. Then Derek nodded. "Once." "All right," he said. He moved. Fast. Systems powered on, screens flickered to life, old connections reestablished, files scanned, images uploaded. Daniel stood still, watching. Ranger moved to the window, guarding, always guarding. "How long?" Daniel asked. Derek didn't look up. 2 minutes, he said. Daniel shook his head. "You've got one." Outside. An engine. Then another. Closer. Ranger stiffened. Daniel stepped beside him. Looked out. The black SUV, and more behind it. "They're here," Daniel said. Derek didn't stop typing. "Good," he replied. "Means we're close." The progress bar crawled forward. Too slow. Footsteps approached. Gravel crunching. Voices low. Controlled. Daniel moved to the door. Positioned himself beside it. Ranger at his side. The handle turned. Stopped. Then, a knock. Firm. Final. Derek's voice came from behind. 10 seconds. Daniel's breathing slowed. The room tightened. 5 seconds. The knock came again. Louder. Ranger's growl filled the space. 3 seconds. Daniel exhaled once. 2. 1. "Done," Derek said. Silence. Then, Daniel opened the door. The man in the suit stood there. Same calm, same control. But his eyes, different now. "You're too late," Daniel said. A long pause. Then the man nodded. "Once." "Maybe," he replied. He turned. Walked away. No argument. No threat. Just acceptance. The vehicles pulled back. Dust swallowed them again. Gone. Inside, The screens filled. Messages, responses, names, photos, records, no longer hidden, no longer buried. Derek leaned back in his chair. "It's out," he said. Daniel looked at the screens, at the names, at the truth moving faster than anyone could stop. "They can't erase it now," he said. Derek shook his head. "No," he replied. "They can't." Ranger stepped closer. "Calm now." Daniel rested a hand on his neck, then looked back at the desert through the window. The fight wasn't over, but it had changed. Weeks later, the ranch didn't look abandoned anymore. Cars lined the dirt road. People moved quietly across the land. Some stood in silence. Some held photos. Some just looked. The house still stood, broken, scarred, but no longer forgotten. Daniel stood near the edge of the property, Ranger beside him. His shoulder had healed, only a faint scar left behind. Same as Daniel. Scars that stayed, but didn't break you. A group passed behind them. Veterans, families, names spoken again for the first time in years. Daniel didn't turn. He looked out across the desert. The same horizon, the same wind, but it felt different now. Lighter. Ranger leaned slightly against his leg. Daniel rested his hand on him. "You stayed," he said quietly. The dog didn't move, didn't need to. Daniel exhaled slowly. "We finished it." The wind moved across the land. Soft now, not empty, not watching. Just there. Daniel looked down at the list in his hand. Names. All of them. He read them one by one. Slow, steady. When he reached the last one, he paused. Cole Ramirez. The silence held. Then Daniel nodded once. Not grief, not anymore. Something else. Something steady. Something complete. The desert stretched out before him. Endless. But no longer hiding anything. Because some truths don't stay buried. Not forever. Not when someone is willing to dig them up and make sure they're never forgotten again. If you believe the truth is always worth fighting for, type 1 in the comments. If you think some secrets are better left buried, type 0. And if stories like this mean something to you, real loyalty, real sacrifice, and the kind of bond that never breaks, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Because there are more stories out there, waiting to be uncovered.